All right, let's get started with Module 1. All right, we're going to be using Into Math as our textbook. And first thing I want to do is just a quick recap of what we taught in our previous lesson. All right, so in our previous lesson, we talked about the coordinate plane. And question number 1 says draw a triangle ABC, and it gives us the coordinates. So let's go ahead and plot these. A is found at -4, 3. And we remember from our previous lesson that all of these coordinates are given to us in x, y. X talks about the x-axis, left and right movement. -4 tells us to go left 4, and then we're going to go up 3. All right, so 1, 2, 3, 4 left, 1, 2, 3 up. That gives us A right there. B tells us to go right 3, 1, 2, 3, and up 1. Puts us right here. And then C is 1, -3, so 1 to the right and 3 down puts us down here. C. Here's our triangle. All right. Next thing I want to just refresh us on is the quadrants. So point B is in quadrant 1. A is in quadrant 2. There's nothing in quadrant 3. And C is in quadrant 4. So that's a little quick recap of what we covered in the last lesson. Let's go ahead and plot this quadrilateral. A quadrilateral is a 4-sided figure. It gives us 4 points, so we'll go ahead and plot that. F is -2, -3, so that's going to be 2 to the left and 3 down. G is -2, 4, so it's going to be left 2, up 4, right here. H is 1, 4, so that's going to be to the right 1, up 4. And that puts us right here. That's H. And then J is 5, -3. So that's going to be to the right 5, down 1, 2, 3. And that is J. So we have a shape that looks like this. All right, 4-sided figure, quadrilateral. Triangle has 3 sides. And we briefly touched on the quadrants. So that should give us a good jumping off point to get started on the first lesson of Module 1. Some vocabulary terms we need to go over. We're going to talk about transformations. A transformation is a change in the position of a figure. It does not change the shape of the figure. So things that could change the shape would be if we change the number of parallel lines. So a transformation, the number of parallel lines stays the same. If the side length changed, then it would not be a transformation. For transformation to occur, the side lengths must stay the same and the angle measures must stay the same. All right, so we can't get figures that if we started off with a square, we're not going to end up with something that looks like that. All right, obviously, something other than the position of this shape changed, so that makes it not a transformation. All right, there are 3 types of transformations. The first one we're going to talk about is a slide or a translation. All right, a slide or a translation is exactly what it's saying. We're just going to slide the shape or translate it X number of units. So let's say I was a perfect artist and that was a perfect square. Nothing about that square would change. All the side measurements stayed the exact same. The only thing that happened is it moved 3 units to the right. If we're talking about a reflection, reflections are going to take place across an axis. So if I had a square in quadrant 2 and I reflected it across the y-axis right here, that would put it in quadrant 1. So it would go from quadrant 2 to quadrant 1. It could also take place if I reflected the square from quadrant 2 across the x-axis right here. That would put it in quadrant 3. Then we could talk about a turn or a rotation. All right. So let's say we had a square in quadrant 1. It is going to be measured in degrees of rotation. So if I said a 90-degree rotation, I could either go counterclockwise, opposite of the clock, or clockwise, the same direction that a clock goes. And 90 degrees would talk about a rotation of one quadrant. So that's all the vocabulary we're going to have to go over. We have transformations, a change in the position of a figure, and there's 3 transformations we could be talking about: a translation, a reflection, or a rotation. So we're going to talk about how this shape goes through each of the slides. All right, so if we start off here in 1, it's in the bottom left, and in 2, it's in the top left. So if orientation is the same, if the orientation is the same, the way that it's situated is the same, but its position changed, that's going to let you know that it slid or is a translation. All right, so from 1 to 2, it was translated up. It went from the bottom left to the top left. From 2 to 3, the orientation changed. So if the orientation changed, then we know that it has to be one of the other two. So is it a reflection? Is it like looking in the mirror? That doesn't seem to be the case. So this looks like a rotation. All right, from 3 to 4, it has the same orientation. So again, we know that it's going to be translated down and to the right. It went from the top left to the bottom right. So it's translated down and right. So if we go from 4 to 5, the orientation changed. It does not look like a mirror image, so we know that it is a rotation. And then lastly, 5 to 6, it looks like it went from the right to the left, so it's translated left. All right. So take a second and pause this video and try to do this one on your own. Okay, if you pause the video, let's go ahead and see how you did. So from frame 1 to 2, it went from the left-hand side to the right-hand side. The orientation stayed the same, so we know it was translated right. From 2 to 3, the orientation changed. It's not facing the same direction, so we know that a rotation took place. From 3 to 4, the orientation is the same. It was just translated down. And then lastly, 4 to 5, the orientation changed, so we know that it was a rotation. Hopefully you did well. If not, we still have more practice to take place. And remember, all we're trying to do is just get a little bit better than we started. So by the end of this lesson, we just need to be familiar with transformations, knowing that the thing that changed is the positional orientation and the 3 different types. So we just need to be able to recognize them: a translation, a rotation, or a reflection. So when you get your workbooks, this will be on page 9, and we're going to look at question number 8. Is figure B a transformation of figure A? Why or why not? All right. So if you notice, all of the parallel lines are still parallel. The angles appear to be the same, but what changed? The side lengths changed. So we would say, no, figure B is not a transformation because the side lengths changed. All right, it's clearly not the same size, so it can't be a transformation. It's got to be something else. Then if we look at 9, is figure Y a transformation of figure X? Why or why not? All right, parallel lines are all still parallel. Angle measures appear to be the same, and side lengths appear to be the same. So we can say that just the orientation changed. And so, yes, figure Y is a transformation. And since the orientation changed, we know that it is either a rotation or it could have been 2 reflections. And we'll get into that in later lessons. So, now we've reached the test prep. The lesson is kind of concluded. I know it was a shorter lesson, but the things we need to be able to do here is notice that we've been talking about transformations. Transformations, what do they change? Well, it could either change the orientation or the position. All right, and we have 3 different types. So we have a slide or translation. We have a reflection. And then lastly, we have a turn or rotation. So if you can do those things, we need to put them into practice on this test prep. So pause the video, attempt these problems on your own, and then let's see how you did. All right, so if you pause the video, let's go over it and see how you did. Daniel is babysitting his little sister. He makes her a sandwich and then uses a cookie cutter to cut the sandwich into the shape of a rhombus. He then flips the sandwich over. What is the shape of the flipped sandwich? All right, well, if he flipped the sandwich and that's all he did, then it's going to stay in the same shape. It's still going to be a rhombus. Determine the number of parallel lines for the flipped sandwich. All right, well, a rhombus looks like this. And it has 2 pairs of parallel lines. So these would make the pairs, so it'd have 2 pairs of parallel lines. Are the side lengths of the flipped sandwich longer, shorter, or the same size? Again, if it's a translation, all the side lengths will stay the same. Select the description of the transformation of the given figure. All right, so if we're looking at the first one here, the orientation change. So we know it's not a slide. It's either got to be a flip or a turn. Well, it's not a mirror image, so that would cross out flip. It's got to be a turn. On the second one, the orientation stayed the same, so it can't be a flip or a turn. It's got to be a slide. And then for our last one, the orientation changed, so we know it's not a slide. It doesn't look like it just turned, so it's got to be a flip. It's a mirror image of itself, and this one was specifically translated across a vertical or the y-axis. All right, so that's all for this lesson. Make sure that you go on to GoFormative and complete the assignment that goes with this lesson.